Well, good morning or good afternoon or good evening, whenever it happens to be that you're looking at this. Welcome to a new innovation in game. This is what we're calling game follow-up. So in our game sessions, one thing we've been noticing is that we often get a few questions coming at the last minute and we don't have time to answer them. And then even in the feedback we get from you guys after we have each game event, sometimes there are questions. So sometimes from time to time, we plan now to bring a guest back just with a little one-on-one with me for a short follow-up where we can talk about those questions and have a little bit more of a chat with the guest and share it on the game platform at iaggame.com, which you're all members of. Or if you're not, if somehow you're watching this video and you're not, please do go to iaggame.com and join up as a member. It's free. So Mr. Walt Power, welcome back.
Thank you, Andrew. Good to see you again.
Well, thank you very much for agreeing to come back just for a short follow-up on your Game 3 session we had.
My pleasure.
I've got 4 questions here for you, and you mentioned also during the event that you might that you had a 6th or 7th paradigm. If we have time at the end, or you feel like it, maybe we could hear those as well. But
Sure.
If not, that's okay too. Whatever you prefer. So the first question I've got here is about the Vietnam market. Obviously, you're down there at Tram. I see the maps of Vietnam behind you, so we know where you are. And you're in the south of Vietnam. Is there saturation in the market there? Because you have only a limited number of customers that are able to join your property. Obviously, it's locals not allowed to come. And you've got a number of casinos down there in the south. And you've even got all those slot machine properties in Ho Chi Minh City as well. So what are your thoughts on that, Walt?
Well, I think, Andrew, that's a very good question. I think we first have to define what does saturation mean. And as I think about it, I ask myself, what is the appropriate return on investment for an investor to come on and think about opening a large integrated resort like ourselves? And currently, the Decree 3, which is what dictates investment in gaming in Vietnam, requires a $2 billion investment to be granted the right to operate a resort with table games. And when I look at the Vietnam as a country, quite honestly, I see it's pretty well. It's the right sized right now, because in the southwest you have Phu Quoc, in the south you have Ho Tram, close to the Ho Chi Minh market. You've got the soon to open Hoi An project, which is near Da Nang. So maybe there's room for one more large integrated resort up north along the coast somewhere, wherever appropriate. And of course, as you mentioned, you have the slot parlors in the cities. So all in all, there's not a lot of room for other large integrated resorts. We've committed to invest $4 billion just ourselves through the course of this project. We have ancillary investors along the coast building beach resorts without gaming, and that will create a strip-like entry. So I think we're pretty close to where we should be.
Okay, so you're saying not saturated, but probably about right with
Yes.
with all the commitments that are there. Actually, it's interesting, if you don't mind me going off on a tangent, it's interesting you mentioned about the $4 billion investment in Vietnam when they first came out with that $4 billion requirement, and everybody raised their eyebrows. They've since reduced it to 2, but your particular property is back in the $4 billion phase, right? So
Yes.
you're allowed to phase that over a very long period of time, right?
That's correct. That's correct. I believe we're talking into 2025, something like that, or maybe even past that date.
Right. Okay. So because people might think, wow, that's a lot of market, given that that's kind of a Wynn Palace kind of a level 4 billion, isn't it? So I thought we'd mention that. Second question was about player experience. When you came and spoke to us in the game session, you mentioned about focusing on player experience. And the questioner here asks, besides service, what do you mean by player experience? What else, apart from the service that they receive?
Yeah, there's a number of things that go into the equation of customer service, and let me go into a little bit of detail for the operators that are watching this broadcast. Things such as ventilation within the gaming floor. Now, it's not so much of an issue anymore at Macau because it's a non-smoking floor. But when I was operating in Macau, I wanted to know how many exchanges per hour there were within that building. That's the metric that an operator should be asking themselves to determine whether the air is of a sufficient enough quality. I think the range goes from somewhere like 50 exchange per hours for a computer manufacturing plant to, I think, appropriate in a casino might be, if I recall correctly, 15 to 18, again, air exchanges per hour. I came to know that filters cannot effectively clear smoke from the air. The only way to get rid of smoke from the air is exchanging the whole air. Secondly, the lighting. I mean, historically in the West, whether it's within the US or to London, low lighting signifies wealth, royalty, things of that nature, calmness. But in Asia, it's completely different. Bright light is a sign of destiny shining upon you and bringing you good luck. So the question is, what is the appropriate light level? Well, in a place like Macau, we literally would measure the lux levels on the gaming tables. And I think that's what an operator should do. Look at those light levels. I think Galaxy and Macau would be considered one of the brighter areas. And so just measure that, whether that's good or bring it down a little bit. But it's an important issue to see what your customers want. Third, signage within the property. That is a part of service. And if I can share with you a short anecdote, back when I first started in the gaming industry, I was watching or listening to a broadcast on National Public Radio in the States. And the subject was the top 10 things that children fear the most. The top 10 things that children fear the most. And the number one thing that children feared the most was being lost in a strange place. And I was thinking about that, how that related to casino design. And my conclusion was that, well, if that's what the children fear the most, we're all grown-up children. So even as an adult, if you're lost somewhere in a strange place, it's a very disconcerting feeling. And as an example, in the casino industry, I would go back to the opening of MGM Grand back in 1993. It was such a cavernous place. You'd walk in there and you couldn't find where the hotel lobby was. You couldn't find where the cage was. There were multiple casinos, and it was very disconcerting. But then over time, they had the directional signage correct, and it worked out quite well. So signage is a key pet peeve for me. Another issue is personal interaction. What are the human touch points for a customer walking into the property or when he's actually in the property? Is somebody greeting them? Are they somebody just at random asking them if they can help them? That's very, very critical for sure. Those few small points for the operators out there. Whenever I walk into any casino on this planet and I'm trying to evaluate how well it's operated, the very first thing I do is I walk up to a gaming table and I inspect the quality of the layout. And if I see a cigarette burn in that layout, or if I see a wine spilt on that layout, that tells me that there's no attention to detail on the rest of the operation. And so I would just, I always want to have almost perfectly looking layouts. I think as a gold standard of that philosophy, if I'm not mistaken, at least in Macau, whenever they change one layout from a table that might have a cigarette burn or a wine spill, they change the layouts of every table in that pit. Now, I don't know if that's necessary, but that's certainly the gold standard of that philosophy. And last, some simple as gaming equipment. Believe it or not, players can indicate what type of playing cards you're dealing to them, who the manufacturer is. So again, I think the gold standard for playing cards, I think most people would agree, would be Angel out of Japan. They do a fantastic job with playing cards. There's really no one in second place. So that sort of thing. So you combine the last 5 or 6 things I mentioned all together. To me, that's a definition of customer service within a casino environment.
Angel, one of IAG's loyal customers, so we've got to say good things about Angel. They are fantastic, though. I mean, a lot of people have said that to me about Angel playing cards. Actually, that there's really no one in second place. Hey, it's interesting you said about navigation around the property. One thing I noticed when I first came to Macau, I'd go into City of Dreams, and I couldn't figure my way around. As many times as I went in there, I'd get lost and confused. Where the hell am I? And then I remember when Galaxy Macau opened, it was so simple. There was the gaming floor was in the middle. There was like a road down the east side, a road down the west side. And you could get from, even though it was huge, you seemed to be able to get from anywhere to anywhere in a minute or maybe 2 minutes. Whereas Venetian was a bit like, wow, I got to walk all the way from one end to the other, you know. So it's interesting when you.
No, you're right. Again, a shout out to Galaxy. If you get lost at Galaxy, just go to the gaming floor, and then you can get your orientation immediately.
Exactly. Yeah, you're straight into the gaming floor, and everyone knows it's basically a big circle around there. It'll be interesting to see how it works when they open phase 3 and phase 4, because now it can't be, right? I remember when they opened phase 1, it was kind of like down the side.
Yeah.
Phase 2 completed the circle. Now, how phase 3 and phase 4 is going to work, that'll be interesting. Anyway,
they'll figure it out. They're good operators.
I'm sure they will. Okay, so next one here is about Tram project itself, and about the fact that it's a foreigners-only casino. And I'm sure you've only been down there a few months, I'm sure you're already sick of hearing this. You hear it over and over again, especially in Asia. If a property is foreigners only, you can't make it. And you hear about this in Korea, you hear about this all the time. First of all, where are those foreigners coming from? And how are you managing comms with them? Because if they're foreigners, then they're not speaking Vietnamese unless they're Viet Q. So they're speaking, I guess, Korean, Japanese, whatever, various different language, Chinese. How are you managing all the different languages as well?
Yeah, that's, we talk about challenges with signage, talk about challenges with signage with multiple languages walking in your door. But you're right. I would, my first reaction would be, I consider expats living in Ho Chi Minh as a local market, as locals. And it's because of the increased GDP growth of Vietnam. There's a very large Korean population within Ho Chi Minh. And those individuals are investors, they're CEOs, they're construction executives. And so it's a perfect market for the gaming industry. I believe there is maybe more than 100,000 Koreans in Ho Chi Minh. And so I consider that a local market. But also there's a substantial Japanese market, Chinese, both Cantonese speaking and from Taiwan, so Putonghua speaking, and then you have Vietnamese speaking. So I think it's critical, and I haven't solved it all yet. I'm still building the team here in Ho Tram, but we will have almost independent teams of Korean-speaking hosts, Korean-speaking marketing individuals, Chinese-speaking, both Cantonese and Putonghua speaking hosts and marketing teams, Vietnamese, Japanese for that matter. So it's just a matter of getting the right language mix of your executives.
And then what about managing communications with players? I mean, are we talking emails? Are we talking SMS? Are we talking personal phone calls?
Yeah.
All those different languages?
Yeah, well, that's literally what we do. On our player development team, we have Chinese speaking who are texting or WeChatting to our Chinese customers. We have Korean speaking player development individuals that are communicating with those individuals in their native language. I mean, it's critical that you communicate in their mother tongue. Now, English is a lingua franca in Vietnam. I would submit to you that English is lingua franca in Macau. But again, for that personal communication, personal relationship, it has to be in the mother tongue.
Yeah, well, I think English has become the lingua franca of the world, really, hasn't it, via the internet? But you're right. I mean, when it comes to a leisure and relaxation and discretionary spend thing like gaming, people don't want to work. They don't want to work in their second language. That's hard work, right? They just want to have fun and operate in their mother tongue, as you say. There's a question here from one of the attendees at the session about AI, and he asks, or he or she asks, AI-powered solutions. Is there a role for that in terms of contactless setups or staff caution in this sort of post-COVID world? I mean, what are your thoughts on AI and technology generally?
Yeah, I think, for AI, there's definitely a lot of potential there. Whether it's mining a database or managing a table game. I mean, you and I are both fanatical chess players, and we both know that the supercomputers beat the world champions today. They can calculate a lot faster than we can. So again, I would suspect that artificial intelligence could be used to evaluate a database, and then try to prioritize who the machine should pass off to a human being, and then communicate directly with a player. And there's already been some AI with face recognition within the casino environment and table game management. And in a related note, there's some upcoming technology, not necessarily defined as AI, but close, that will be transformative in the casino environment. When I look historically along my career, when the first the continuous shufflers came out for blackjack, That was a big step. And it basically eliminated card counters like you and I from going into a casino and trying to get an advantage over the house. And everyone said at that point, if you remember back, oh, blackjack players will stop playing because they don't, blah, blah, blah. And guess what? They're still playing blackjack. I'm still playing blackjack. I'm sure when you walk into a casino during a holiday, you're playing blackjack.
No, very rarely these days, but anyway, go on.
Yeah, yeah. And secondly, the angel eye shoe,
Yeah.
where the cards are read. The hand is actually determined before the players expose the cards. That was transformative in the sense that it eliminated card mucking, a player introducing or manipulating the cards before they were exposed and try to cheat the casino. That was transformative. What I see coming in the near future, a combination of technology and artificial intelligence, are these what are called these intelligent tables that actually can track the movement of gaming chips, where it goes from a player to the house or from the house to the player, can identify a chip to a certain individual. In that way, you can first of all, you eliminate all mistakes. And you and I both know that when a mistake is made and the player sees it, if it's his benefit, he's not going to say anything. If it's your benefit, he's going to mention something. So there's a built-in inefficiency that will be overcome with these intelligent shoes. Walker Digital is a big company that's doing this with technology. And even though it's not pervasive today, I can just foresee in 5 years that it may be pervasive just because of the economic benefits it can bring to a casino operator.
Yeah, I mean, you hear. I was having lunch the other day with a top casino executive who shall remain nameless, but he was raving about the benefits of Walker Digital and how that they've put those tables in, and they're not cheap. They're quite an investment. But I tell you what, he was just saying, I mean, they're just fantastic. They allow him to, as you say, picking up mistakes, dealer analysis as well. Like who are your slack dealers, who are your top dealers, and getting right onto them, that sort of thing. So even though it is quite an investment, and rightfully so, it does pay for itself. And so there's a shout out to Walker Digital because they've created a great product that everybody seems to love.
Absolutely. I wish I could afford them.
Yeah, that's the problem.
It's a good product.
And that's, you need to finance the acquisition of those tables. Really, good argument for them. I don't know what their commercial deal is, but good argument.
But again, it's pervasive is the right word. You're going to see something like, if not Walker Digital, something similar on all tables in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I wonder if the technology gets too invasive rather than pervasive, it might turn players off. Like if they can tracking every chip around the casino where it's going, players might start to feel as though that I'm being watched a little bit too closely. I wonder about that sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're all right. And there are people, they know they're in the casino. There's thousands of cameras watching everybody, right. And as long as the takeaway is to the player, they're getting a fair game. If the casino makes a mistake, they're going to step in and give the right payout to the player. So it works both ways.
Yeah, there's nothing better than having a host or having somebody walk up to a player 5 minutes after they left a table and saying, "Hey, we made a mistake. We owe you." I mean, there's no better PR than that.
Yeah, exactly right, Andrew.
You mentioned during our session that you had a couple of other paradigms beyond the 5. If you have time and the inclination, let's hear one or two.
Yeah, here's a couple. Again, let me say that false paradigms and Walt's pet peeves are kind of the same thing. So I'll share them with you. Okay, an additional one is individuals who use the term hold percentage to define win divided by rolling chip volume. In my mind, that's incorrect. There's hold percentage, and what I use is win percentage. Hold percentage is the win divided by chips purchased on any cash game in any casino in the world. Win percentage is win divided by rolling chip volume. So a hold percentage might be 25%. The win percentage might be 3%. And I see many people in the industry using hold percent on the rolling side, and it's disconcerting to me. Another example of that is using the term turnover. I know in the Australian gaming market, turnover can be used for 3 distinct things, but they use the word turnover. Sometimes it's used for rolling chip volume. Sometimes it's used for GGR. and sometimes it's used for net gaming revenue after tax or something like that. So I think you have to be clear on what the terminology is.
Let me butt in and just add something to that. I mean, that's funny you brought that up. I didn't know you were going to bring that up, but that's one of my pet peeves as well, particularly turnover, because turnover, in working in the media, often you have media organizations report on casinos and they get it wrong all the time. They quote, oh, this is the turnover. And you think, okay, so what do you actually mean? Do you mean the total of all bets placed, which really technically is the turnover, the total of all bets placed? If you say, roulette, the win rate on roulette is 2.7% of turnover. Turnover being the total of every bet placed. Then you have turnover as in the total of all bets lost, in other words, rolling, which is effectively the total of all bets lost. And then you have turnover as in GGR as well, and they're totally different numbers. We have this problem a lot in pachinko. When they quote pachinko, they say, oh, pachinko's a $300 billion industry. No, it's not. It's a $30 billion industry because you're quoting the total like cash in. Anyway.
Yeah, gotcha.
What's your next one, Walt?
Okay, one last one for you is margin versus EBITDA. You have analysts, bankers, they say, what market are you going after? And they want to hear, well, I'm going after the premium mass because it has the highest margin. That's false. In the casino environment, you can have independent teams going after multiple market segments simultaneously. You can have a marketing team maximizing your penetration into the mass market. At the same time, you have an international marketing team going after the junket business, a direct VIP business with a lower margin, but it's still generating EBITDA. It's a classic distinction in business school where do you want an investment? Do you want to maximize ROI, return on investment, or do you want to maximize EBITDA? As far as I know, the only thing you can deposit into a bank is cash, and that's EBITDA. So even though you're attacking a lower margin segment, go after everything with independent teams. That's a key to success.
Sometimes I say to people, if there's a $100 note on the ground, a $50 note on the ground, and there's a $10 note on the ground, and you're only allowed to pick up one note, we'll pick up the $100 note. But if you're allowed to pick up as many notes as you like, pick them all up.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks for doing this little follow-up session.
Always my pleasure. And I look forward to our next chess game.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually when we can, when any of us can travel. So lucky you managed to get down there. When did you get down there?
Well, I started mid-February, but I lucked out. I came back from a trip to Macau on March 5th, I believe, and got here just in time. And yeah, if you got to be locked down, a beach in southern Vietnam is not a bad place.
Hey, let me just throw this one in to you. When can we come to Vietnam? When is there any news on Vietnam opening its borders or?
No, I haven't heard. I mean, I asked the same question to everybody that might have a hint, and I don't think there's a distinct answer. Vietnam has been very successful in their anti-COVID campaign. Less than 350 diagnoses, 0 deaths, and they want to make sure they don't have any imported cases. So sooner the better as far as I'm concerned. But I think everybody wants to be pretty cautious.
Well, it's pretty amazing in a country of what maybe
90 million.
90 million. I was going to say 80. Wow, 90. It's pushing up there towards 100. So that's pretty amazing. All right. Well, thanks again for your time.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew.
No problem at all. And to all of you out there, we'll see you in Game 4, whenever that may be. We're hoping to announce it in the next few days. In fact, maybe it'll be announced by the time you watch this video. So we'll see you then. Bye for now.